I don't think anyone's waiting on us, so let's just get into the show.
Am I supposed to say words?
No, I don't know. I wasn't waiting on anything, but I wasn't coming up with anything either.
We're both just
Oh yeah.
staring
I'm
off
I'm
into space.
I'm gonna do a proper intro this time.
Okay, yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Function Call. I got on the show with me today, Mr. Glides all over those DMs.
Oh wow, I'm not in the DMs.
You're
I'm
back,
all over
baby.
the DMs.
You're back.
I'm back.
How's it feel to be back, Mr. Grant Glidewell?
That is just ruthless. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
mean, technically you're not back on the show. You're just, back as gliding into DMs.
Guess who's back?
Oh God.
I don't know. There's
Uh,
there's just too many references we could go in all sorts of
yeah,
directions with that.
Backstreet.
Appropriate, inappropriate. We don't need it.
Backstreet's back. My name is
All right.
Austin Gill. And yeah, we're here to talk some web development stuff. But before
I
we get
always
into
feel like I should introduce you, and and then you introduce yourself, and I'm like, it's kind of like the person who's waiting at the door, and you're like, should I hold the door? Like pre-COVID times, like not now. You never hold the door for anybody now.
you slam
But
the door
like,
shut in their face, like get your maskless face away from me.
oh my gosh,
Stay indoors with your COVID coughs.
that's intense.
No, I don't do that anymore.
um, yeah. So should I be introducing you, or just should I just leave it as you introduce yourself, and people kind of feel bad for you?
Um, well now you've put me in a corner because I'm screwed either way. I'm either going to introduce myself and feel bad, or I'm going to tell you to introduce me, which is equally, or maybe even more depressing.
It's more depressing that I introduce you.
It's not that you introduce me; it's that I am asking you to introduce me. Right? Which
Okay,
one's worse?
so, oh man, this is one of those relationship problems, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, I don't want you to do the thing I want. I want you to want to
I
do
want
the
you.
thing I want.
Yeah, I want you to know what I want. Don't
Ooh,
ask me.
ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. These are like intractable relationship issues.
Yeah, we'll figure that out offline.
Okay.
But anyway, outside of that, how's your week going?
Uh, it's good. I think I'm living, as the kids say, my best life.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm
Living your
into it.
best self.
I'm I'm
Yeah.
I'm doing me, and I think it's pretty good. Like, I got nothing to complain about. I got no rants.
Oh
Um,
man, that is Zen mode.
yeah. So like I've been like over the past week or two, I've been like I so traditionally I have like amazing boundaries with work. I can cut it off and not think about it, and like I have no issue with that, and it's great. And like I can drop work, and it's fun. And a lot of this comes from like a history of the type of work that I used to do. You have to be able to do that, and so it's a lot easier with this kind of work. There's, it's just easier to kind of drop. Lately, I've been dreaming about work, waking up thinking about like, and it's not a bad thing. It's not like I'm overworked, because I'm not. It's not that I'm just like excited to do some of the stuff that we're working on right now. And so,
Okay, that's a good one.
yeah, like
That's
it's
the one you
kind of
want.
nice, because like, me, I'm the, big advocate for, unless they're paying you, don't even think about work, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't crossed that boundary, for myself in this, like, due to the excitement. Like, I'm not at risk for being taken advantage of by the company I work for. Like, that's not where this is going. This is just like, things are very good at work right now, and I'm kind of not used to it. Like, it's a little uncomfortable. Um, it's kind of like I remember when I got my first developing job.
Yeah, those are
Like
great.
that kind of excitement, and you're like, oh, what are we going to work on today, and all this kind of stuff. Like we're doing a lot of project scaffolding, like laying foundations that are going to be used long term. And so like this is work that I haven't really done at this scale before, um, or with the tools that we're using before. Um, but it's really neat to kind of watch it all happen. It is by no means like easy. It's by no means like this slam dunk. Um, but it's very apparent to me like the outcome of this is going to be something really, really cool for a lot of people who are going to be working in the teams that we're building. So like I'm just like stoked on it. And it's funny because like the dreams aren't, I remember waking up uh and solving like this Gatsby performance issue in one of my previous jobs. Like I woke up and I'm like, oh, it's so obvious. I just need to, do some lazy loading
Oh
here
yeah.
and it'll be great. Like it was super easy. And now I'm like waking up uh with like organizational ideas and like how I'm going to split up work. Like it's very weird.
Yeah. Isn't it weird how you solve coding problems in your sleep sometimes?
It's super weird. It's super
Yeah.
weird.
You wait. Well, I think the weird part is really you wake up and you ask yourself how you didn't come to such an obvious solution when you were like in the middle of it, you know?
Well, some of that like mm, so some of that has to do with have you ever tried to remember a movie? You know who's in the movie, you can't name them, you can see their face, you know the actors, you know the plot, you can describe it, you can type it into Google and Google will probably know what you're asking about. But as you're like focusing on this, it
Hmm. Oh,
it
and then it comes to you
somehow
later.
right, like it completely evades your memory. And I think when you're focused on a problem, like your conscious like internal pressure keeps you from thinking about it in maybe out of the box kind of ways, right? Whereas when you're not focused
Yeah.
on it, your subconscious process can like reorganize it, right? I mean,
Yeah. It
this
has
is
a
what
way of
happens when we dream.
accessing things differently.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
this is another reason that I'm a big advocate of like don't sit in front of your computer for 8 hours a day just hacking at different stuff, context switching and taking short breaks. Like take some big breaks, give yourself some time. Like we work on stuff that's very cerebral. And so like constantly forcing ourselves to be productive can be counterproductive. And this is kind of evidence of that, right? Like my company doesn't pay me to sleep, like that's not there, but they benefit from me sleeping. And so there's
Yeah.
got to be some balance there, right? Paid
Yeah.
nap times.
So they should pay you to sleep.
You're we're all heading in the
Um,
right direction. That's a great
yeah.
solution.
Yeah, I was reminiscing the other day of like when I was happiest at work. And I realized that it was my first real developer job when I didn't have a lot of responsibilities and there was a lot of things that were new and I was able to like someone else was handling design, someone else was handling project management and I just had to code and I just coded all day and like built cool stuff. Um yeah, man, those were the good days. But then today, like I couldn't do the same work today and feel as fulfilled because kind of like what you're saying, there's I think the beautiful stage is somewhere between the challenge and also those like layups that are like doing stuff that you're good at, because you can't just be
Yeah.
challenged the whole time. It kind of sucks.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. And I think, it's sort of part of the conversation that we had with Amel Hussein in one of the previous episodes discussed those steps towards kind of growth, right?
Yeah.
The quote unquote mindset, right?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
of moving up.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I think like having that goalpost start to shift from we're shipping features to something a little bit larger in impact across an organization, um, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was a long uh, intro to what we're going to talk about today, and really a perfect example is we're just kind of catching up on some things that have happened in news or things that are going on in the tech world for us. So
What are some of the other podcasts called? Do they call this like a garbage can episode?
no,
Like
that's when
a
people are talking about our show. It's just garbage.
burn. We're allowed to say
No, no,
that
no.
because
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
on
you
the
can't say
show.
that. Yeah.
You can't say that. If it's in Canada, is it a garburator episode? Have you ever heard that term?
No.
So you know the thing in your sink that grinds up like the garbage disposal?
Yeah.
They call it a garburator up there. I love that term. It makes me so happy.
It sounds like the word fell into the garbage disposal halfway out of coming out of your mouth. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, say it one more time. Tell me it doesn't.
I don't know. It's a garburator.
Yeah,
You're
it's like
not wrong. You're not. So I hear it, and now I can't unhear it.
yeah, my bad. My bad. Now you
Okay.
don't. I took something you loved and I threw it on the ground and stepped on it.
So in the for the sake of the show to like move things forward. So like where do I get my news? Twitter has like lots of the goings on of the developer universe, and there's been lots of stuff on there. And I saw you like push some tweets out that confused me to no end. Like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm working on a project that I'm really excited about. And I don't know, the long and short of it is that I want users to be able to provide a configuration file that exports an object, and I want to be able to use those the contents of that file in like a function in my library, right? So I want to use a user to be able to like import my function from my library and then call the function and basically be able to reference like in an intelligent way the contents of the object that they defined in their config, right? And the
Are you
way
talking
that I'm
about
trying to
return types?
uh I'm
Or
talking
like the
about
return type of that
it's like
function?
no. So it's like it technically is a function that takes a callback function. And I want the callback function to provide their configuration options so that I have like TypeScript when they pass their function, like let's say it takes parameter and I want, if I define in my configuration file, well, tokens. Tokens is what they're going to be defining, design tokens.
Okay.
So if in their config they define tokens and then size of 8 pixels or size 1 is 8 pixels, size 2 is 10 pixels, whatever. I want them to be able to pass a function to my function and it receives a parameter called, let's just say tokens, and it should be typed. So it should provide IntelliSense that when they try to access properties of tokens, it is suggesting to them properties that are come from their configuration file. So it's sort of like assigning the parameter to the type of the import from their config.
Okay.
Which is super heady and probably excellent podcasting material.
Yeah. So like I think there are probably some good suggestions out there, but one thing that comes to my mind is an extensible type, right? That takes a generic and then consumers of your library
that's what I don't want.
Through convention can
boo.
Can assert this type.
You can finish. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm trying to tell you how to do this in a way that works within the constraints of like TypeScript. Look, man, if you want to write some like bizarro function that returns another function, then
I want people to use my library and just be like, man, that is so good. It just gets out of the way. Like I don't want them to have to lift a finger.
Okay, so that's impossible.
That's not true. That's not true. Or I don't believe that's true. Not yet. So here's the thing.
You want to know about configuration? You're creating a convention already, right? And so what I'm saying is if you use a convention that's in line with the way that TypeScript defines and extends types, you can absolutely do this, and then just through convention. So like so many libraries have this already, right? So
Uh-huh.
Emotion has this. Yeah, I mean, Emotion is the one that I'm most readily familiar
One.
with that
So
involves like
many of
CSS.
one.
I'm willing to bet that
At
Style
least
Components
two.
has this. I know that. So like here's another example in
Mm.
Create React App, right? There is this
Mhm.
convention. There's a convention of having like app.js is the root of your application, and it's the one that does React DOM render and takes the core app and creates that relationship. And this exists. And it's rarely modified in most cases, right? It's kind of an escape hatch. If you need to do some more work at that root level, you can do it. But in most cases, you don't even touch this. And so you could do something like that, where through convention, you have these types that are defined. But if you want an escape hatch where you can redefine what these types are, you can feed that type a generic, and then it will return that type. It sounds like that solves your problem, but you don't want a convention. You want some sort of configuration that creates magic and does that for them.
Well, they need the configuration file. And yes, I want the
Okay.
magic to happen for them. But then it's
Okay.
like, why am I going to ask you to write a configuration file, but then also everywhere that you use this function, that you're going to want to have those things provided, you have to also like type it. I don't know. It's not going to get solved today. But you know what did get solved that was a really interesting challenge around that
Hmm.
is, and I didn't think was possible, was if you wanted to have, if you have a root directory, that's a TypeScript thing, and you want to import a file that may or may not exist within your project, which is a crazy thing to think of because if it's your project, you know whether the files exist or not. But let's just bear with
But
me.
these are consumers that you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the related problem, but it's a different problem. But if that file exists or not in my project, I can say, hey, TypeScript, go and import this file from this location. And I found the magic configuration of TypeScript runes to combine to basically say if that file exists, I want to assign this type to whatever the export of that file is. And if not, I want to fall back to a default configuration or a default type, which is a little bit of the magic, and I think gets me halfway there. And I want to write a blog post about that because I think it's interesting. I don't know how many
It
people are going
sounds
to
like a
need
good
it.
one.
I don't think not a lot of people are going to need it, but it's interesting. And I didn't find anything about it, probably because I'm the only psychopath that wants to do it.
It seems
Um,
weird, but I mean,
it's weird.
all of this stuff starts out as some,
Yeah.
niche case, and then who knows?
But if I can solve this other problem, and here's the final hurdle for me is when you do TypeScript, like you basically tell TypeScript where your types exist, like the root directory or the base directory where it can find type definitions from.
Hmm.
When I'm working within my own code base, that works just fine. And I can reference files like in other places that may or may not exist. But as soon as I publish it as a package and that gets imported into a different project, I can't go up to the project's level scope because I'm living within the node modules of that project. And so I can do anything within the node modules or within my module, but I can't
Hmm.
go up to the project root to get that configuration file that I want. So if anyone knows how to do that, please let me know because it would be amazing.
Okay, that sounds wild to me.
Yeah. Man, if I can get it to work though, it's gonna be awesome. I don't know. You got something else that is tickling your fancy that you think you want to move on to as a different subject?
I mean, there's the age old battle of light mode versus dark mode. Um,
Yeah, this is a good one.
so I was saying at the beginning of the show, like we get on, we start filling out, some document around like what are we going to talk about today? Folks, we plan this thing in grave detail. Just so everyone's aware of the amount of prep that we do for this show. It's really, really intense. And while we're doing
you're
that prep,
welcome.
we're staring at this Google Doc, and like I dark mode everything, but I usually join this call from like another machine, like not my work machine. I don't, want to get like Slack messages in the middle of this, so I'm always blinded by Google Docs when it
Blinded
opens.
by the light,
Blinded by the light.
wrapped up like a deuce.
Another runner in the night. Have we discussed this? This is about drag racing. It's a very weird song.
To discuss this.
It's
at least not right now.
It's revved up like a deuce. A deuce is a type of car.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
So yeah, that song's about drag racing. Anyway, great music. So light mode is a crime against my eyes, and dark mode is something that I seek everywhere. And so like I go and I look for this. I look just for an extension for Chrome because there's no way to do dark mode natively in Google Docs. So I installed some extension. And after I installed it, everything but the document itself is in dark mode. And so it's like the most pointless thing. It still has this, massive white rectangle, almost worse this way, because there's really intense contrast there. Too much.
Yeah. Speaking of contrast, I'm kind of surprised by how much, how strong of opinions people have on light mode versus dark mode. For the longest time, I just didn't care, whatever. And now I go towards dark mode, but not like if an app doesn't offer it, I'm not offended.
I mean,
it's not personal.
If I'm expected to use something that's going to be open on my screen on a regular basis and it doesn't have dark mode, I'm just not going to keep using it. I just won't.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll find an alternative that offers dark mode because I'm sitting in front of my computer for as much as 30 or 45 minutes
in a whole day.
Yeah, but like as much as I'm in front of a computer, I have preferences for how irritated I want my brain to get with what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Does it give you headaches or anything?
I tend not to. I mean, I got LASIK many years ago, and that resolved. Like I used to get lots and lots of headaches from staring at screens, and not so much anymore. I also have my screens at a great distance, and try really hard to keep them in like an ergonomic position. Like that's a whole other show that we could do on like our setups and ergonomics that might be worthwhile.
Probably not. No one cares, but
I mean, maybe
do it for our own sake.
Yeah. But like if something doesn't offer dark mode, it seems kind of rude, and especially like in browser land, right? The work that we do, if your web app doesn't offer dark mode, like when did you write this? Because there are native browser APIs that tell them like preferred dark mode. Prefers dark mode is OS level. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's another blog post I want to get into. Real quick though, do you think there's a difference in terms of energy consumption for light mode versus dark mode? Because I've heard that like your battery
really
lasts
depends
longer
on the display. Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
If we're talking OLED, absolutely, because the pixels are actually off. Any other display technology, no, it's going to be negligible. It's ridiculous. Okay. But also, I don't think so. Like display brightness has some impact on battery life, but it's heavily device dependent. Like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So that felt like a trap.
No, it was like a curious thing that I don't know anything about. So
yeah, I think Marquez Brownlee has a few tests on stuff like that, or Linus probably does. I don't know. Some of those like tech YouTubers, they know about this stuff. They're paid to like look at it.
Yeah, it's got the big YouTube dollars.
A couple of them do.
Speaking of light mode, dark mode, is a lot of improvements that have come to the light mode, dark mode story in CSS or in web development in general. Like this is another blog post that I have like queued up to finish up writing about like the history of light mode and dark mode in CSS and how it went from like at one point you'd switch a class at like the body level of your HTML, and then you'd have
Yeah.
multiple style sheet themes for whatever you wanted to support. And now, yeah, you can you can basically inherit what the operating system preferences are for light mode and dark mode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty cool because you can. Oh,
Is Nugget
um,
okay?
I think he's fine.
Okay.
Um, you can oh yeah, when you go into the light mode dark mode story, like you basically you get it you kind of can foot gun yourself, because if you ever define your font color as something that's not a native color, you can, most likely probably going to be dark to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
um, you could end up with in a world where you enable dark mode support, but then when you switch to dark mode, you have a black background and dark text. Is that clear?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, you have the media query that like supports at dark mode, and you can switch things up, but you can actually make it even simpler because there's some native special system UI colors in CSS that you can say canvas and I think text. So you can say like my text, or body color equals text and background equals canvas or whatever. And when the color switches from dark mode to light mode, those switch as well. So you don't actually need a media query to detect if the user prefers dark mode.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's worth checking out. It's
Yeah,
like in the
I like anything that you know basically avoids having to write JavaScript
yeah.
to do styling.
Yeah, I really like the direction of applications being able to inherit design choices from the user's operating system or the user preferences,
Yeah.
which gets really weird because there's even things like the font. You can have your application show whatever the system UI font preference is, but then
Yeah.
that gets into like, well, if we have a brand font, like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, you also touched on something earlier when we were talking about this light mode, dark mode switch that I also
Yeah.
wanted to talk about, which was browser extensions and how scary they are.
Why are they scary? I don't know. Like I just install stuff and it's fine.
I know. Well, because they can run any JavaScript on any web page.
Is that true though? Don't they require some permissions in certain cases?
No, that's why you shouldn't store JWTs in local storage, is because then if you install like some random browser extension, it can have access to that local storage and just like send that JWT off to Grant Glidewell, Master Hacksaw, you know?
I'm just collecting all the jots.
Yeah, man. It's terrifying.
So I get that, right? Like the browser's a sensitive place. I check my bank account stuff on there sometimes, right? Like
Yeah, it could be doing like keylogging.
that's terrifying. That
Yeah.
really is, and
Go
it seems,
uninstall all your extensions.
yeah, yeah. I mean, uh, there's very few that I keep around that I need. Um, Reddit enhancement suite. I should not use Reddit ever. Whoa. So there's very few that I actually need. Now, in VS Code, I wonder if anybody actually goes and checks out the repositories before installing like VS Code extensions, because while they don't have access to a place like local storage where they could get JWTs or anything like that, they do have access to your project, right? I don't know. Like I don't know
Yeah, yeah.
what the security risk
Uh,
on VS Code extensions is. So like I I was looking to do something in VS Code earlier this week, and the thought kind of crossed my mind because I saw an extension, and I went to the repository, and I'm like, this is something that I would tell any developer, like, don't install this npm package. It's possibly malicious. Like, it's unmaintained. It's by somebody that I've never heard of, and the code is like a wreck and terrifying, and not something that I want to spend time deciphering to figure out if this is going to cause problems for me in our code base or not. So, like, I'm wondering what limitations are in place for VS Code extensions, or is it like browser extensions where they can do whatever they want?
Yeah, I actually should probably be more careful with what I said. I don't know if they can do like browser extensions can do whatever they want, but
Mm,
I know that I get logs to my console from scripts that are running that are like
mm,
from browser extensions.
yeah.
And I don't know what sort of due diligence. I imagine not very much is being done on the browser's part or like Microsoft's part to make sure that these, you know, VS Code
So I was
extensions.
alluding earlier to the extensive research that we put into this show.
The
I
answer
think
to
it's
all
pretty
of your
clear now.
questions is I
Oh.
don't know. Sorry,
So
let me sound more professional. It depends.
senior developer.
Yeah.
It depends. Um, I would like to look into like specifically around like VS Code extensions. Because if they can look at env files, and I know one in particular, GetLens, is able to like reference files that I wouldn't expect it to, right? Like, it's looking deep into the Get history and telling me kind of who has made what. Like, is it able to make network calls? Is it able to, uh, look at my
Oh
env
yeah, for
files?
sure.
And
Definitely.
so if it's able to make network calls and it's able to look
Yep.
at my env files,
Yep.
these are a huge security risk. And I don't understand how that's mitigated, or if we're just or if it's like the npm package warnings where we're just waiting for the next huge attack to take place based on some vulnerability that has been placed in an open source package that no one has bothered to look at because it's got millions of downloads. Must be safe.
Yeah.
Somebody looked at the code.
Yeah, it's got 2 stars, so I mean like 2 reviews, 2 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, but this kind of reminds me a little bit of the conversations around npm packages as well,
Yeah.
and how there are like insecurities in a lot of npm packages, not just like, oh, someone didn't escape some characters when they print something to the DOM, and so there's like a cross-site scripting potential, but
Hmm.
there's like legitimate Trojans and
Yeah.
like Bitcoin stealers or whatever, like in the
Little
npm
miners that,
packages. Yeah,
yeah.
and the way that they work, because also something I'm learning about and getting into with this project I'm working on, is you can run what's called well, there's different hooks, but like a life cycle events happen when an npm package gets installed,
Hmm.
and the one that I'm working on is the post install script, and you can run any terminal command in that post install script. So when you install something, a package, that package lives in a repo in npm somewhere, comes down over the internet onto your machine, and then npm checks whether that package has any post install script. And if it does, it's going to run it. And it's going to do whatever that thing says to do. So,
So you could just like curl post
yeah,
all the env files to
yep,
some endpoint.
yep,
This is
yeah,
silly.
yeah. Well, it is silly. And that's where, what's the guy that was working on Dino? Ryan
Doll.
something? Ryan Dahl, right?
Yeah, Ryan Doll.
Yeah, well, yeah. So he was like
Also,
NPM.
believe it or not, has some sort of history or relationship to Node too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, he created Node, didn't he?
He created that mess and he's trying to clean it up with
Yeah. Well,
Dino or Deno
he
or
he had a talk about it, about all the mistakes that he had made with Node and npm and whatever, and that's why he made Dino and was trying to fix it. And one of the things that he
Yeah.
introduces is this idea of sandboxing, or essentially like permissions. And so if you want to install an npm package, or like the Dino version of an npm package, I think if I got this right, it has to request certain permissions from you. So if it's like something that has no need to be messing with the file system, like reading or writing to the file system at all, it has to
Mm.
request that from you. And then it says, please, sir or madam, may I have file access rights? And you say, no, get out of here. Or, yeah, sure, why not? Which is what everyone's going to end up doing anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
you have to allow this to use what is it? Slick, that CSS library that lets you make a carousel,
Yeah, yeah.
like Slick carousel. Yeah. 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 It can have
Yeah.
like read write permissions, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. The whole security stuff is like, I don't know. It's
But
almost
wait,
like
so
ignorance
weren't
is
you?
bliss.
But you were like, hey, how do I access the parent project? And you can't seem to figure out a way to do that from,
Yeah, so
right?
this is where I'm at today, where I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm gonna install excuse me to anyone, I don't know, whatever.
This is for
Uh
adults.
yeah. Um I'm gonna use a post install script. When someone installs my package, it's going to go, like, theoretically, I can't remember which directory the post install script technically works from,
Mhm.
but it doesn't matter. I'm basically going to go to the parent's like root directory where the package is being consumed, find the config file that I'm looking for if it exists, and if it does, I'm just going to clone it over to my project because then I have access to it. And then my project can do the whole thing where it's like, hey, does this file exist? Yeah. Provide the typings from that file. If not, fall back to this default configuration.
Yeah, allow the like some config file to point to a overrides.d.ts like definition file. I
Um,
think some projects require you to like override their types. That would create a type collision. I don't know how people do this.
I don't want to do
Somebody's
that.
done this though.
No,
Anyway,
dude, this if I could do it, it's gonna be awesome because then you're just like just throw the file out there and it's gonna use those types. It just knows. It's smart. It's magic.
I think there are projects that do this, or there is a
Or there are
convention
not.
that or no. But so I'm wondering, have you had success in crawling to the parent and accessing files?
Yeah, yeah, I can do that just fine.
Okay, so
And
my
even
concern about a post install script, like just looking for anything that's .env.
it's totally legitimate.
Oh my god, that's so terrifying.
Yeah, yeah.
Or it could read, so like on a production build, it could read those environment variables. It could probably
Yeah,
just take.
probably. It could I could probably climb up the entire file structure to your like bash profile and get your what is it? The private key.
So people who do like real security work are probably listening to us like these idiots. Or maybe they haven't thought about this and this is, somehow novel. But I have serious doubts.
Yeah. We also probably just planted the seed of doing terrible things in the minds of all of the
In the minds of
all
carburetors.
of the all of the listeners that are just like on the fence and was like, "Oh, I could steal some Bitcoin, baby."
Oh God. Yeah, go ahead, steal Bitcoin. I don't care.
Jeez.
I mean, in the days of Web 4.4,
Yeah. I mean, if
Bitcoin
anything,
is.
get something that's worth your value, like Doge.
I don't know how any of this stuff works. Is that a real thing or is that a joke?
It's a real joke, but it's a real thing as well.
I feel like that's an accurate description of all of crypto. It's a real joke. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
I'm just not in on the joke, I
It's
guess.
no, it's a real thing in the same sense that a joke is also a real thing.
It's true. It's true truths. That is some
Yeah, yeah,
truthitude right there.
yeah.
Oh man.
Read into it. Hey, take the red pill or the blue pill.
Take them both, man. Get like
Yeah, let's get weird.
super fucked up. Don't half-ass it.
Yeah,
I did say
don't
this
take
is for
pills from
adults.
strangers. Well, that's all I got, man. Oh, you know what? Actually, today this is Cloudflare week, and I just want to do a quick little shout out to some of the
Is that
stuff
like a
that they've been.
national holiday?
I'm sorry, not Cloudflare week. This is Cloudflare's birthday week. So this is
Oh,
usually the week that they start doing some crazy announcements. I don't know if you use Cloudflare. I use them. I love them. They offer a lot of really cool things. But man, they are taking swings at AWS lately, or all the major cloud providers. They just
jeez.
announced what is no. Okay, so they've had uh cloud functions or like edge functions for a while. And
Mhm.
they're one of I think they were the first provider to offer no cold starts, and not to mention like no cold starts, but they have edge functions, which are very similar to Lambdas, except they run at all of their locations around the world
Mhm.
rather than from like single locations. So
Yeah.
it's going to reduce latency and not have a cold start. And on top of that, their billing is cheaper. And on top of that, they have a key value store that's like built in, right? Like readily available, also cheaper than AWS. And then they recently announced object storage, which is like if you wanted to store JSON blobs or whatever, right? Or images, um,
This is a
you could
bucket.
use what?
It's a bucket.
Actually, no. Sorry, they had persistent object storage, which I think is something that like you could technically kind of use as like a database sort of thing if you need more than a key value store. But
Okay.
then this week they did announce essentially an S3 compatible service, which is a slap in the face at S3. That's like
Mhm.
way cheaper, not only cheaper for storage, they don't charge for egress. So when you access your files from AWS, there's like this hidden other cost. It's like a tax that developers have to pay that once you access so much bandwidth of files, you have to pay for that, not just to store your images, but to access them. And Cloudflare announced they're calling it R2, I think, but it's the S3 compatible service to store images,
They're
which
calling
is
it
a big,
R2.
yeah,
That's ruthless.
yeah. I thought so. I thought it
Um,
was funny. So yeah, just some cool stuff coming out of Cloudflare. If you haven't had the chance, take a look. It's pretty exciting.
yeah, I haven't looked into it. I think this is probably a good time to announce. I mean, since you're just advertising for them, they're also now sponsoring our podcast.
Uh, that's not a nice thing to say because they're not sponsoring it, but it makes me look like an asshole.
That's my only goal in doing this show is
What
just
a
to make you
jerk.
look like an asshole.
What a jerk. They're not, but we would love them to sponsor. I did get them to sponsor a couple of the meetups that I hosted, which
Oh,
they
that's dope.
provided. Yeah, they provided free pizza, which was great back when people met in person.
Oh yeah, the before times.
Yeah. Anyway, great company. Um, they do registrar services, DDoS protection, CDN,
That's
caching.
interesting. Like, I wonder. So they have their own infrastructure then.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. You should take a look. It's worth building some products. They also announced something called Cloudflare Images, which I don't actually know. I imagine it's like a Cloudinary sort of competitor where you
Okay.
can basically upload your images to them and then request them, but you can also do like image manipulation on the fly and have it auto detect ver- uh, the best format of that image to serve.
I think that becomes really, really useful when it's paired with a library that's built to kind of consume it. So, like, that's something that I plan to
Yeah.
have us build into our image component in our UI library because the uh, the hosting that we're going with provides a very similar service.
Yeah. I would take a look. It's worth it.
Yeah, super nice.
Well, that's all I got. I think we covered some pretty interesting stuff. You got anything else?
Not, not really. No,
Cool. Well, let's
my
jump
my brain
into
is empty.
Let's hopefully not. Hopefully you have room for one more thing, which is
What's that?
shout outs.
Oh man. Okay. Okay.
Share some love.
So I am going to shout something out that a buddy of mine has been telling me to do for a long time. What's funny is my buddy's been telling me to do this for a long time. I don't think he's actually done this. So it's a bike fitting, right? So like if you're
Mm.
so I'm a we could call me a cyclist. I'm a bike rider person. I ride bicycles. Um, but I went and got a fitting on a gravel bike, which is basically a road bike with big fat tires that you take off road. It's a lot of fun. But
It's a road bike that you ride off of the road.
correct. So
Okay, we're clear.
it's medium danger. It's so much fun. Um, but it's something that like if you ride a road bike, road people are like very into fittings because they're in the same position for like hours at a time. Mountain bike people not so much into fittings. They're like, put it in a comfortable position, you'll be fine. There are like some general rules for like your distance to the pedals. But anyway, so I went and I did this bike fitting, made a couple of changes. I wouldn't call it like huge night and day difference. Like everything's better now, but like I think I have a baseline for what should work for me, and I can kind of work from there. So it's nice to know, um, some of my like weirder body measurements, like short torso, short legs, short arms. I'm a short person. Um,
Just short everything. You would think proportionately would make sense, but
nope, just everything is too small. Is that too much personal information? I don't know. But yeah, so like I'll shout out bike fittings. I think they make sense if you're serious about riding a bike, if you're doing any sort of like endurance training or anything like that. If you're spending significant time on a bike, like this will help prevent injuries. Um, so I think it's worth doing.
like chronic use injuries. Not
Exactly.
if you fly off and smash into a tree.
It won't stop you from crashing when you make a dumb on a bike.
Yeah.
Your bike fitting doesn't care.
Yeah, that's good. I got to get one actually because I haven't done that myself, and I do a road bike, but I don't do it all the time, so
It's scary.
it's on the to-do list.
Riding with cars, man, it's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm gonna leave it at the shining review that I gave to Cloudflare because
Oh, your shout outs to Cloudflare? It is
I mean
occupying some space in the show. I mean, that is a lot.
I'm a big fan. I've used them for 5 or 6 years, and they keep getting better.
So I'm gonna put it out there to the folks at Cloudflare that they could really benefit from the mystery audience size that we have here, and just the genuine nature of our show. And I feel like um, we're a worthwhile investment, and reach out to Austin directly when you'd like to set up sponsorship. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll see if we can fit them in with
The other sponsors pounding the door down.
exactly. We had to get a bigger door. All right. Well, that's the show. Thanks, Grant, for hanging out and chatting. It was a fun one. And yeah, until next time.
Yeah, good times.